I help you, young man?
I got a $100 check from my grandma, and my dad said I need to put it in the bank so it can grow over the years.
Well, that's fantastic. A really smart decision, young man. We can put that check in a money market mutual fund. Then we'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest, and it's gone.
What do you mean? I have $100.
Not anymore, you don't. Poof.
Well, what can I do to get back
I'm sorry, sir, but this line is for bank members only.
I just opened an account.
Do you have any money invested with this bank?
No, you just lost it all.
Then please stand aside for people who actually have money with us. Next, please.
Hey!
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Press for Truth TV. Today is Friday, April the 12th, 2013, and the inevitable has happened. The Bitcoin bubble has officially crashed, dropping over 50% in just a matter of hours. It reached a high of $266 and then quickly dropped down to $105. Essentially erasing over $1 billion of value, $1 billion of currency from the market, just poof, just disappeared within a matter of hours. And it's not coming as a huge surprise to most. Most people can recognize that any kind of a parabolic move like that, there's bound to be a crash. It's the fastest rise and fall probably in the history of the market, and I think a lot of people who were getting in later, just before the crash, didn't really understand Bitcoin or really know what it was truly all about in the first place. And when I started learning about it, I first heard about it probably nearly 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and started hearing about it more and seeing it more and more popping up here and there, and then probably close to a year ago I started looking into it, and I certainly was skeptical at first because I am aware of a globalist agenda to create a one world currency, a cashless society. And the thing about a cashless society is that people are still going to buy and sell and trade. It's just that there won't be any physical money behind it. It'll all be based on credit and operating under a digital currency. So my first thought about Bitcoin was that this could be a test run. This could be the beginning of the introduction of a global cashless society, basically. So I've always had my guard up about Bitcoin, but at the same time, I really did like the concept of stepping outside of the system and stepping away from the centralized bankers, moving away from the Federal Reserve and using this peer-to-peer system. It's the cryptology, the encryption is solid. Apparently, hackers out there would tell you that it's the code is secure. So it is safe in that aspect. But I think what ended up happening is for the people who saw this incredible rise in Bitcoin, especially after the Cyprus incident, that's when it really, really took off. You got a lot of people who just wanted to get rich quick. You get people who saw this fast rising currency and they wanted to, as the classic goes, buy low, sell high, get in when they can and sell shortly after and make a lot of money very quickly. And that's why people are buying into Bitcoins at $200 and over $200, but bringing it all the way up to $266. I think it was, the people who bought in at 10 cents or 20 cents, 50 cents, $1, maybe 2 years ago. Those are the people who truly understood what's good about Bitcoin, the fact that it's a way of stepping outside of the centralized banking system. And those are the people who got into it for the right reasons. And I think recently, within the last few weeks, we saw this incredible rise by people who just simply wanted to get rich quick. And what ended up happening with such a fast rise is that people panicked. A sell-off started, people started to panic, and as the story goes, the whole thing crashed. And I'm not too sure if it's going to come back, but again, I'm starting to wonder I go back to my earlier suspicions that this maybe was a test run for a global digital currency and the eventually establishing a global cashless society. But again, I like the aspects of stepping outside right now of using the current centralized banking system. So I think we're going to see more of these types of currencies popping up in the very, very near future. There's already the little brother to Bitcoin is referred to as Litecoin. It should be interesting to watch that one. And I've just been, as I said, somewhat on the fence with Bitcoin, so I've been sitting back, just kind of watching the whole thing unfold, just kind of taking it all in, and sure enough, this inevitable crash in the bubble has occurred, and a lot of people have lost out on a lot of money. But again, a lot of those people were just trying to get rich quick, and they didn't understand the true benefits of going with something like Bitcoin. But again, I'm always going to be skeptical about a digital cashless currency. Anything that isn't tangible, is not backed physically by anything, is risky, not necessarily safe in my opinion to get into. And I wanted to share with you today a video that Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, put out just one day before the crash. And he broke down what he saw coming. And that's another thing. I think a lot of people who analyze the markets and who are interested in the economies of the world pretty much saw that this is coming. It can be calculated mathematically. You can just look at the history of parabolic moves. They're always going to crash. When you have a fast rise, you're going to have a fast crash. I just think people were taken by surprise about how quickly this actually occurred. And Mike Adams was recently on the Alex Jones show, and he pointed out some very interesting aspects to this that I hadn't even considered, that I thought were very interesting, pointing out the idea of the centralized banking system purposely buying up bitcoins in order to create this fast rise, and then to begin selling them off to create the crash in order to generate the panic, in order to generate the fear, and to crash the new currency so that the general population would no longer trust any kind of a currency that is outside of the centralized banking system. That's an interesting point. He very well could be right about that. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder if it is the goals of the central global banking systems to eventually install one of these digital currencies that people are going to think are outside of the system, but really is not. But anyways, it has occurred. This just happened yesterday. And again, Mike Adams predicted that it would happen just less than 24 hours before it actually happened. So I'd like to share with you a video of his analysis. I think he gives a great breakdown about why it rose so fast and why the inevitable crash was going to come. And sure enough, it did come less than 24 hours after this broadcast. So here's the excellent analysis of the fast rise and fall of Bitcoin from Mike Adams, the Health Ranger.
Eventually, it's going to crash hard. And I bet my reputation on that, Alex. I am 100% sure we're going to see a massive Bitcoin crash at some point with an ultra-accelerated velocity of the crash. It will be the fastest crash of any currency in the history of human civilization. And there are mathematical reasons for that I've tried to lay out in the story that I just published. I think it's up on InfoWars. But it will be a high-velocity crash. The reason is because people are buying Bitcoins who don't know what Bitcoins are and who have no use for them. These are speculators. They're buying Bitcoins in the same way that people bought tulip bulbs in the tulip bulb mania of, I think, 1637. It's going to be the same thing. It's just a new vehicle, and it's going to crash Bitcoins eventually, at which point they will become a good value to buy once the crash has happened, Alex.
Go over some more of the mathematics for people.
All right. Well, Everybody who's holding Bitcoins right now believes that their Bitcoins are worth $200, $210 because that's the latest market price for the Bitcoins. So there has been literally hundreds of millions of dollars in valuation that has been artificially created by the ramp up in Bitcoin prices. So everyone who holds Bitcoins thinks all their Bitcoins are worth that, and in a grand total, it's well over $1 billion. In truth, though, once a sell-off begins, the greed that is currently pushing the market upwards will transition into fear. The price support will falter. The fear will start a sell-off. The sell-off will start to devalue the holdings that current people have in Bitcoins. Once they see their money dropping down, they're going to start selling.
That's right. Slow growth is always the healthiest. When something goes straight up like an Atlas rocket, it's going to go straight down, and you already see them putting money laundering rules onto it, just preparing to try to then outlaw any competing digital currency, because the globalists are actually going to go themselves on record to a global SDR backed up by carbon taxes, wellhead taxes, and money transfer Tobin taxes. So they will try to strangle this in the crib. They may even be pumping money into it so that they can then dump it later. I mean, if they didn't, look, I think like the enemy. If I was the enemy, I'd do that.
Exactly. The central banks would be very smart right now to be buying Bitcoins, pushing it up, making it very, very popular, getting as many people on board as possible, and then when the timing is right, do a mass sell-off of Bitcoins, flood the marketplace with massive supply of Bitcoins, causing a crash, causing Bitcoins to be discredited so that no one ever trusts a decentralized, non-government-run currency again. That's the brilliant, evil tactic of the central bankers, who we know are deeply engaged in psychological warfare and market manipulations. So I think they are involved right now. Well, just remember that right now what's driving the Bitcoin market is greed. The idea that you can buy low and sell high. Greed will turn to fear, as it has always done, Alex, in the tulip bulb bubble, in the dot-com bubble, that I also publicly predicted that it was going to crash 2 years before it did. And I know you did as well. And in the housing bubble, every bubble in history has the same psychological profile. Eventually, greed will turn to fear. Fear will turn to panic. And remember that the Wall Street stock markets, they have limits of how quickly a stock can drop in a day. They will close the market if it limits down too much. So you have a limit down and a cooling off period overnight. Bitcoin has no limits. There's no cooling period. That's why when the crash begins, it will be the most rapid, high-velocity crash of any currency in history. That's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.